Dark Souls is a game about dying and learning from those mistakes. The world does not care for you, but is designed to give you just enough chance that you want to continue lest you give up and go hollow. The paths throughout the world are tough. It's a repeat experience of getting down to the last Estus flask, having no idea where the next bonfire is, maybe you missed it, thinking what enemy is around the corner ready to fuck you up. And then you finally do it. You turn a corner and spot a bonfire, or open a door or take a lift and realise that you found a shortcut and everything is linked together in an interconnected world. It's a series of games that took me such a long time to get into, immediately being pushed away by the thought of it being hard and unforgiving. But once I'd finally gotten into them, it reinvigorated my love for video games at a time where I was just tired of yearly releases of copy-pasted games that felt like they were made by people just going through the motions. It starts off with you being thrown into this world as an undead, told that a fire is fading and tasked to ring a bell. The story is built from limited dialogue and clues left in the world. It doesn't mean the world is empty, but it's an atmosphere you soak in. A cold, harsh world. The small amounts of dialogue set this slow pace.
But there's no salvation here. You'd have done better to rot in the undead asylum. But too late now.
And you'll need that slow, methodical pace to engage with this world. But I want to show the charm of these NPCs.
The nice thing about weapons, they never betray you. So pay them a little respect, eh?
That's strange. Well, you should. No need to hide your reaction. I get that look all the time.
The internet is tied to my experience of Dark Souls. In fact, it completes it. Now you can call that good or bad, but the effort it takes to traverse the world, to find someone or something locked away, makes you question what the hell is going on. It doesn't overburden you with lore and dialogue, but leaves a mystery. You can piece things together from some dialogue, read item descriptions, and for some people that's enough. But after completing these games, I always find myself going online and watching lore videos. Channels, especially like VaatiVidya, do such a good job at piecing things together, and you realise how deep the lore goes, how much information is hidden away, like how much of the world can be hidden from you. If you pay it no mind, then it doesn't take away from your experience. But all that information and work put in creates a richer experience, makes the world more cohesive and connective. So wise man once said, even if you don't immediately notice it, your brain will. And the internet was always intended to play a role. Messages left on the ground by other players hinting at a direction to go, or how to tackle a situation, or giving you warning of what's to come. Being lost or struggling in this world and seeing a message can offer that human comfort. Small pieces of advice, or just the knowledge that there are others out there making the journey. You are not completely alone. For me, the true Dark Souls boss fight experience would be me, a big fucking sword, single-handedly taking on a monstrous boss. But the summon signs, either from players or NPCs, can help you out. The first Soulsborne game I completed was Dark Souls 3. And summoning players what eased me into the genre, making everything not so overwhelming to begin with. And from there, I've played almost all the games and loved it. Elden Ring is one of my most played games of all time, but when I got to Shadow of the Erdtree, I felt like it had gone too far. Like they had forgotten what made these games special, and had to go back and replay the first Dark Souls to see if it holds up. Honestly, I thought I wouldn't enjoy replaying Dark Souls after my experience with Shadow of the Erdtree. Like, every game is a big collection of lies. It's not real, but the question is, how good is the lie? Shadow of the Erdtree broke that fantasy with an empty world and bosses with just massive health bars and wombo combos that last too long. And I thought I might go into Dark Souls with the same mindset, thinking, hey, is this a challenging, well-designed fight? or just a bullshit boss with a high health bar. Like with the Capra Demon, is it a tough claustrophobic fight where you have to immediately run out the way and deal with the dogs, or is it just bad game design? But then you fight something like the Gaping Dragon, which is slow but feels more of a spectacle. You burn your stamina running around, but you still have time to attack without the boss 360 no-scoping you. You can die in a few hits, but you actually have that breathing room to think. And the world itself makes you respect it. One big example is when I was heading through the Great Hollow. I got cursed, which cuts your health in half. I had nothing on me to cure myself. On top of that, my weapon was damaged, and of course I hadn't bought anything to repair it. There was no easy or immediate way out. I had to make my way back up through Blighttown with a spear that does far less damage than my main, going up against these fatties who could kill me in one hit. Passing through the ruins of New Londo, and as I'm about to hit Firelink Shrine, I get hit with that welcoming music. It's a comforting feeling of returning home or a safe haven after roughing it out in the world. And as you get into it, there's a certain thought process that can take hold. You start questioning yourself, do I need more health? Should I level endurance so I can wear heavy armor? But I just have that voice in my head just saying, no, just get stronger. Who cares if you get ganked by a swarm of mobs and can't roll out the way? If you're stronger, then you can kill them quicker. Every time I had a thought of how else to level up, I just had that voice inside my head telling me to level strength. Focus and commitment just to do more damage. I don't wonder why you're dying so easily. We need to talk about the Ornstein and Smaug fight. This was considered a big fight back in the day, and I was struggling against them. I had also tabbed out, and when I tabbed back in, I accidentally hit Sunbro Solaire, who I absolutely did not want to kill.
You really are fond of chatting with me, aren't you? If I didn't know better, I'd think you had feelings for me.
So the routine consisted of me dying, spawning in, dodging Solaire, dodging the knights, and running back to the fight, where I died and had to repeat it all over again. I know there's a way to cleanse your sins and de-aggro the NPCs, but warping hadn't been unlocked yet and I didn't want to make the journey. I was getting more and more frustrated, and that voice in my head came back a bit stronger.
Why you? How could this? My son.
This is peak Dark Souls frustration, and I'm sure you're asking me, how is this fun? It's because from this moment of pain, something clicked. Because I was just moving way too slowly in these fights. If I hit one of them, then the other would come in and hit me before I had time to get out of the way. I needed more speed. Medium rolling in Dark Souls feels like fat rolling in Elden Ring. Now there always comes a point in my Soulsborne playthroughs where I ditch the shield, but now I thought, what if I ditch everything? If I'm rolling fast enough in Elden Ring in full heavy armor, dying in 2 hits, but can still beat the boss, then why can't I do the same here? Turns out that even being almost naked, you can survive more than 2 hits. I'm as fast as I was in Elden Ring, but the bosses are still as slow as Dark Souls is. With that speed boost, I won first try. It's that moment where everything comes together. You've died against what seems like an unstoppable force multiple times, only for you to try a new strategy or learn the fight. That sense of accomplishment, because you were presented with a challenge and beat it. The helmet of Solaire remained to remind me of what happened. I haven't mentioned much of the story so far, and a lot of people say the game starts falling apart in the second half with the world design. But for me, this is where the Dark Souls experience started to truly kick in, and I want to go deep into it. Spoilers, I guess. Meeting Guinevere, being granted the Lord Vessel, and tasked with the next stage of the journey.
And beseech thee, succeed Lord Gwyn, and inheriteth the fire of our world.
And from there, returning to Firelink Shrine, restoring the Firekeeper, resulting in her finally speaking.
Forgive me. I am impure. My tongue never intended for restoration.
They cut out her tongue. The world is cruel, and you kind of realize that the story is even darker than you thought. The people who would restore light to the world, maintain the Age of Fire, cut out this poor girl's tongue, and she's been brainwashed to think that she is unclean, almost as if there is a deeper truth they don't want her speaking. Then talking to Front, who gives you the lore dump.
Forgive me. I really should calm down.
And finally now, after wandering through this world in search of meaning, you have it. First to the Duke's Archives, and I want to point out that not every boss is amazing. I felt the sea fight to be a joke, like it was just me running around as he constantly and awkwardly turned to face me. One of us getting a hit in, me recovering stamina and repeating. But descending into the ruins of New Londo at this point is such a vibe. You find the crestfallen knight, who's been sat at the bonfire for so long just berating you. You think, hey, maybe you actually inspired him to journey out, only for it to end in failure. Either way, he's gone hollow, and you're forced to kill him. That fate meets so many other characters, but it's dark. You're down to your last Sunny D again. You have no idea where the fuck to go, and you just hear ghostly screams. You're descending into darkness, and it's not the only time you'll do it. You'll finally find the fog wall, only to fall and die in the abyss. You're missing something. There's more of this world to explore. I took the route to the catacombs next. And again, compared to Elden Ring, I found myself caring more about Pinwell than I did half the random bosses in the DLC. Because it's a route that takes you there, getting boned by skeletons that if you run past will launch themselves into you, making sure to wipe out the guys who will constantly resummon the skeletons, finding the shortcuts and jumps, past these fuckers who will chase you down, only to end in a room filled with books and corpses, with a weird monster who admittedly ain't the hardest but can still fuck you up. I think maybe I missed a bonfire somewhere, but that route just to get to him forces you to respect the world and the boss himself. No, like seriously, the catacombs almost feel sadistic with the reviving skeletons. There's also like a route to run that they clearly want you to take once you figure that out. But those skeletons can leap attack you, which feels like an intentional fuck you. Shortly followed by the fucking cartwheels, and then Pinwell. For real, I'm being serious, did I miss a bonfire somewhere? Either way, it does two things. One, it makes the game feel dark. You can show me a cool trailer for Elden Ring DLC, when I'm running past every enemy then I don't give a shit. But you throw me in this scenario and I feel the weight of this cruel dark world. And two, parts of Elden Ring will just put you in front of a boss that will kill you 24 times in a row. But here, the world itself will do that. But you want to keep trying because you know it's possible. It's like you know you fucked up by not dodging an enemy, or being too impatient. I still keep coming back for more. The world is cruel and uncompromising, and I don't even consider myself good at these games sometimes. I can be far too impatient and a little too stubborn to change my strategy. But I keep coming back again and again because I know that I can do it. You learn a bit more from each attempt. You know it's not impossible. It's your own fault for dying half the time and you want to push through to prove that you can do it. Anyway, after Pinwell, instead of being granted with a bonfire, you are met with the Tomb of the Giants and literal darkness. Glowing eyes and monstrous skeletons. You can see Lost Eyes live from here and get the reminder that it's all connected. But for now, the descent continues. Actually finding Patches and feeling relief to see another living being in all this.
Really? Then I'd have no qualms telling you. There's a fine stash of treasure right down that hole. I found it first, but, well, we're friends now, so I'll split it with you.
If you know the series, you know Patches, and you know the patrol is coming. Yeah, he is a shithead and tries to weasel his way out afterwards, but if you let him kick you down, you actually find the Skull Lantern. Finally, light in the darkness. Bro actually helps you out. It's that change in emotion from, I'm in complete darkness, anything can leap out and kill me, to, holy shit, I can actually see. And going on from there, it doesn't feel like you're descending into hell. No, it feels like you're descending into death itself. which is appropriate considering the lore of Nito, a boss who I completely had to change strategy for, riding the line between is this skill or is this cheese, realizing I can completely cloak myself in the heaviest armor and survive the army of skeletons who Nito ends up killing them himself. Then it's just a matter of running out the way when he does his area of effect, and running back in to repeat the process. I mentioned the game falling apart a bit in the second half, and Lost Izalith is the prime example. Of course, enemies are always dotted around the world, and the more you think about it, the less it makes sense. Armies of guys legit just standing there facing one direction for an eternity, but still they're spaced out to give you a constant challenge. And then you get to parts of Lost Izalith where it just feels rushed, like someone legit had 5 minutes and placed a whole bunch down without much thought. And the Bed of Chaos feels like a bit of a joke. It was always fun to have a gimmick boss, but when you take into consideration the run up there, only to potentially be pushed to your death, it's kind of annoying, but it's not too hard and it actually saves the states between deaths. And with this, I realised something cool. Every holder of a Lord Soul is hiding, either behind a small army or in the very depths of this world. You could just call it game design, but it adds to this dying world. As if their ages have passed long ago, alliances have ended and the age of fire is fading. They know it and hide away in the depths of the world, awaiting the day they are finally slain. At this point in the game, I hadn't much left to do. I don't want to spoil every detail, but I had to take on the DLC before fighting Sif. I've been up and down about the main game bosses, but the DLC is where they really got the formula right. The Sanctuary Garden is the first boss in the game that actually got my heart pumping. It's a prime example of having patience against a relenting boss, or being punished for its attacks. The part where I complain about Shadow of the Erdtree, again. Artorias. This is what Dark Souls fights should be, compared to late Elden Ring and Shadow of the Erdtree. Within the first 30 seconds, I've actually managed to hit the boss more than once, and the hits actually do a small chunk of damage. It's a fight that you can actually learn their movesets, realise which one have follow-ups. There are times you can actually heal and times where you shouldn't. All of this is at a pace where you can actually learn the fight. It feels like a fair 1v1, and you feel accomplished when you beat the boss. Later Elden Ring and Shadow of the Erdtree by comparison, it's just bullshit where the boss jumps around for 45 seconds, hits you with a 9-hit wombo combo, will sometimes have a follow-up and sometimes won't. Feels like you always get punished for trying to heal, and when you do hit them, it feels like barely a scratch. OG Dark Souls by comparison is tough but fair. And that leaves us with Manus, the main boss of the DLC. Again, it's cool descending into the literal abyss to fight this dude, but it hit the point where I questioned if the cracks were starting to show, having to run a minute and a half to get to him, only to potentially die in a couple of hits. And after figuring it out, googling it, I realised that just equipping the most stable shield is enough to survive most attacks, as long as you can balance the stamina regen and slowly walk away from this magic. The game is amazing, but moments like this keep popping up where I have to ask, was that skill or cheese? That doesn't take away from the Artorias fight, and the whole exploration of the DLC, and Kalameet brings this back around. I kind of preferred him to the dragons in Elden Ring. Don't get me wrong, the first time you fight a dragon in Elden Ring is a spectacle. And maybe I'm just tired from the copy-pasted design throughout the world, but they do feel like you're just swiping at their legs. Kalameet almost feels like a giant dog the way he moves and with his charge attacks. The fight is very fun. Also knowing you've become powerful enough to take on a dragon from a war long ago. I took on the DLC just to unlock this one cutscene, where he recognises you for saving him. And moments like this is where Dark Souls storytelling shines. There's so many games out there where I just skip through dialogue and feel completely unattached to characters. But here I'm giving so much of a shit about a man and his dog, none of whom I've had an actual conversation with. This game builds story with atmosphere, actions, and minimal dialogue. Then it's back to the Four Kings, where, just like with Nito, I realised all I needed was heavy armour and a big fucking sword. The souls are placed, I'm ready to enter the kiln of the First Flame and save this world. But first, just some odd jobs to mop up. Returning to the Great Hollow and heading to Ash Lake is a religious experience. I've descended into death with Nito. I've descended into hell with Islith. I've descended into the abyss twice with the Four Kings and Manus, but now I've descended into the depths of the world itself. Long path through the sand. The music. The Everlasting Dragon, which for all you know is the only living remains of this ancient world. Zarazith. The game sets a tone with no dialogue, little action, and just sheer scope of the world and that amazing soundtrack. But I do have some problems with the optional content. I committed so much to this game, but there's just a part where I just said no. I know Gwyndolin ain't the toughest boss compared to some, but if you die to him, you do not get sent back to the nearest bonfire. Then you are left with a small onslaught just to get back to potentially die again. Some will say it's a glitch, some will say it's because of lore reasons. But this is just the part where I realised it wasn't worth it. I also wanted to go for the optional ending and talk to Karth. But to do that, you have to not place the Lord Vessel down until you've beaten the Four Kings. But like, how would you know that? You're also not told how to go back to the Asylum or the Painted World, and I generally wonder how many people actually figured it out and how many had to Google it, or hear from a friend or a YouTube vid. The counter to that is that it's all optional. This stuff won't stop you from completing the game, and talking to NPCs should give you enough hints for the main quest itself, if you pay attention and explore. I guess discovering this optional content must feel really fucking awesome for the people who are obsessed with the game and actually explore every nook and cranny. They're actually rewarded for their experiences. But for me, so much of the optional content has always been tied to the internet itself and finding out online. But even accessing the DLC, stumbling upon the women is one thing, but then having to go to the Duke's archives, get the pendant from an NPC that isn't even aggro to you, and then to know to travel back to the original spot. I've got that level of respect for FromSoft, never being afraid to put stuff in their games that some people could completely miss out on. But when it comes to the whole DLC, how far is too far? No, that's like a legit question for you. In the age of the internet, you can just Google anything, and I don't know if I would have found it without Googling. Then finally we hit Gwyn. I did fail a few times against him until I switched up my strategy, but this isn't so much of a grand finale, but it's more of a mercy kill. The kiln of the First Flame is burnt to ash. We've already established that this world is dying, and having sacrificed his soul to the flame 1,000 years ago, he is essentially hollow. The music kicks in, and after the long journey you've been on, it just feels right landing that final blow. One last complaint. The Age of the Dark ending just felt right on this playthrough. Let the age fade and a new one begin. But I still never spoke to Karth. But if you haven't got the information online, you can essentially just trigger the ending and have no idea what the fuck is going on. I know I've had a lot of criticisms throughout this, but it's because I expect so much. There's so many other dogshit games out there where you just don't care. The combat is uninteresting, the dialogue is stale, the gameplay loop repetitive. I'm caring here because this world forced me to, because of how good it is at its peak. It's an experience. Your expectations get raised so much that the cracks are more visible. I know that's too much to ask from me, and I know you could call so much of that petty. But after beating the game, I could just sit here listening to the credits and just take it all in. There is an unmatched magic of the first Dark Souls. The second one is a game that exists, and the third one is better in a lot of technical ways. and it might be my favourite, but the first one is just something magical. The game makes you respect it. It's tough but fair, and sometimes a little unfair, but that's part of the charm. I thought Shadow of the Erdtree broke the illusion, and while I went in with that mindset, and there are parts where you can cheese or think, well, that's bullshit, it still holds up. It feels like more than the sum of its parts. It's an old world, it's a dying world, it's a world that has existed long before you came along, and it makes no compromises to you. It's a world that must be respected, must be explored. Great powerful beings hide in the dark, in the depths, in the abyss, almost as if they know their time has passed, and you must journey through it. Find moments of light in the dark, find hope, find strength, and don't you dare go hollow.